Now, your focus group, Haley for Harris, is confident of swaying the election. Why so?
Well, there are enough people who voted for Republicans who voted for Nikki Haley in the primaries to determine the outcome in the swing states here in this election that we're going to be finalizing tomorrow. Many of the states, including my state of Pennsylvania, were decided by small margins, both in 2016 and in 2020. And the number of people who voted for Governor Haley in the primaries is larger than those differences. So if even a third of the Haley voters in Pennsylvania vote for the vice president, she's going to win this state and she's going to win the country.
So when you talk about who is the target voter for your group, are you just looking at Republican voters who have been Haley supporters or centrist Republican voters who could just be leaning towards the Democrats now?
We're looking at all sort of center-right voters, both registered Republicans and folks who are independents. Many of those people have sort of what you would call traditional conservative views, more in the line of Ronald Reagan or John McCain than Donald Trump. And they're looking for a political home. And what we've seen is that Vice President Harris and her campaign have reached out very strongly across the aisle, trying to build a bipartisan coalition, something we haven't seen in American politics in a generation, actually. And it's working. People are being persuaded to, in many cases, vote for the Democrat for president for the first time in their lives.
What are the factors that are prodding traditional Republican voters to opt for the Democrat presidential candidate, Kamala Harris?
So there's both a push and a pull. The push is away from Donald Trump. And these voters, obviously, all American voters know Donald Trump very well at this point. He's been at the center stage of American political life for a decade now. And people know what they don't like about him. And those Republicans and independents who voted for Governor Haley in the primary, they knew that they were making a statement against Donald Trump. So that's sort of the push. The pull is that the vice president is a new generation of leadership. She represents the opportunity to break the last glass ceiling on the achievement of women in our country. And she's made this really historic effort to move toward the center and to be very open to a coalition form of government, really. She's talked about appointing a Republican to her cabinet. She's talked about having a bipartisan policy committee that will advise her. These are really important steps, and her economic policies are squarely in the center.
Primary candidates and their supporters typically line up behind their party nominee. This year, Nikki Haley has endorsed former President Donald Trump, that too in July. But in your view, what explains why she has not been seen at a campaign rally yet with Donald Trump?
Well, you'd have to ask Donald Trump, because clearly Governor Haley has made herself available. She's been sort of returned to being a loyal Republican team player, if you will. That doesn't in any way determine what her voters are going to do. These are independent-minded folks. They've already proven that in the primaries. They're going to stay independent, and we believe that half of them, perhaps more, are going to vote for the vice president. I think the answer to your question directly is that Donald Trump is somebody who doesn't fight fair. He doesn't like people who are challenging him, and Governor Haley gave him a very strong challenge, so he wants to reject her. What's more important, though, is that he's rejected her voters. He's rejected this 20% of the Republican electorate and told them that they're not welcome back into the Republican Party. Really a foolish thing to do for a candidate who's trying to win the thing, but productive for our effort to get these folks to vote for Vice President Harris.
Nikki Haley has warned Trump's campaign of being too focused on bromance and masculine, and it's very masculine. Is that a factor why Haley supporters, especially women, would rather choose a pro-choice Harris than a pro-life Donald Trump?
I think that, yes, I think you've put two things together that are related to one another. On the one hand, this is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court of the United States overturned Roe versus Wade, the decision that for 50 years had guaranteed abortion rights to women in this country on a national basis. It's the first time that the American women have a national stage to respond to that, and I think we're seeing that response in a very big way. But in addition to that, the Trump campaign has run, this very sort of toxic version of masculinity as its centerpiece, and it's backfiring. I think it's particularly been backfiring in the last 10 days as we see the gender gap just getting larger and larger. When the vice president wins this race, as I believe she will, it will be primarily because the overwhelming majority of American women will have voted for her.
Surprisingly, the polls are showing both of them toe to toe, which is why I want to ask you, are you confident that Kamala Harris will retain the traditional Democratic states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan? At the same time, will she be able to flip the Sun Belt states, which are, tilting towards the Republicans, like Georgia or, say, even Arizona? North Carolina?
Well, I try to stay out of the prediction business and stay in the persuasion business. But I am confident that the vice president is going to win and that she's going to have more than the 270 electoral votes that she needs to do that.